Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjalisalakaya Chakshurunmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namne Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyadishadharani Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaurabhaktarunda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Today we are going to read on the way to Krishna book. It was prepared from the transcripts of lectures by Śrīla Prabhupāda, which he gave in New York in the fall of 1966 on the Bhagavad-gītā, and the editor was Hayagrīva Dāsa, who was formerly known as Howard Wheeler. So today we are going to read the first two chapters of On the Way to Krishna book. The first chapter is Throughway to Happiness, and the second chapter is The Way of Chanting and Knowing Krishna. So let's begin. Okay. Through way to happiness. So every one of us is searching after happiness, but we do not know what real happiness is. We see so much advertised about happiness, but practically speaking, we see so few happy people. This is because so few people know that the platform of real happiness is beyond temporary things. It is this real happiness that is described in the Bhagavad-gītā by Lord Krishna to Arjuna. Happiness is generally perceived through our senses. A stone, for instance, has no senses and cannot perceive happiness and distress. Developed consciousness can perceive happiness and distress more intensely than undeveloped consciousness. Trees have consciousness, but it is not developed. Trees may stand for a long time in all kinds of weather, but they have no way of perceiving miseries. If a human being were asked to stand like a tree for the only 3 days or even less, he would not be able to tolerate it. The conclusion is that every living being feels happiness or distress according to the degree of development of his consciousness. The happiness that we are experiencing in the material world is not real happiness. If one asks a tree, "Are you feeling happy?" the tree, if it could, might say, "Yes, I am happy. Standing here all year. I am enjoying the wind and snowfall very much, etc." This may be enjoyed by the tree, but for the human being, it is a very low standard of enjoyment. There are different kinds and grades of living entities, and their consumption and perception of happiness are also of all different types and grades. Although one animal may see that another animal is being slaughtered, he will go right on chewing grass, for he has no knowledge to understand that he may be next. He is thinking that he is happy, but at the next moment he may be slaughtered. In this way, there are different degrees of happiness. Yet all of them, what is the highest happiness? Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, Sukam at, Sukam atay, Atyanikam yattad Buddhi Graham Atindriyam Vetti Yatra na Chaivam Stitas Chalati Tattvaha. In that joyous state, Samadhi, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses, established thus, one never departs from the truth. Bhagavad-gītā 6.21. Buddhi means intelligence. One has to be intelligent if he wants to enjoy. Animals do not have really developed intelligence and so cannot enjoy life as a human being can. The hands, the nose, the eyes, The other sense organs and all the bodily parts may be present on a dead man, but he cannot enjoy. Why not? The enjoying energy, the spiritual spark has left, and therefore the body has no power. If one looks further into the matter with a little intelligence, he can understand that if it was not the body that was enjoying at all, but the small spiritual spark that was within. Although one may think that he is enjoying by the bodily sense organs, the real enjoyer is the spiritual spark. That spark always has the potential of enjoyment, but it is not always manifest due to being covered by the material turbulence. Taber, Material tabernacle. Although we may not be aware of it, it is not possible for body to experience enjoyment without the presence of spiritual spark. If a man is offered the dead body a beautiful woman, will he accept it? No, because the spiritual spark has moved out of the body. Not only was it enjoying within the body, but it was maintaining the body. When that spark leaves, the body simply deteriorates. It follows that if the spirit is enjoying, it must have its senses also. Otherwise, how can it enjoy? The Vedas confirm that the spirit soul, although atomic in size, is the actual enjoying agent. It is not possible to measure at the soul, but that is not to say that it is without measurement. An object may be seen as to be no bigger than a point, and maybe it is maybe seem to have no length or width. But when we perceive it under a microscope, we can see that it has both length and width. Similarly, the soul has also its dimensions, but we cannot perceive them. When we buy a suit or a dress, it is made to fit the body. The spiritual spark must have form. Otherwise, how is this how is it the material body has grown to accommodate it? The conclusion is that spiritual spark is not impersonal. It is an actual person. God is an actual person, and the spiritual spark, being a fragmental part of him, is also a person. If the Father has personality and individuality, the Son also has them. And if the Son has them, we can conclude that the Father has them. So how can we, as sons of God, assert our personality and individuality, and at the same time deny them to our Father, the Supreme Lord? Atindiyam means that we have to transcend these material senses before we can appreciate real happiness. Ramante yogino Ramante yogino nante satyananda cittamani. The yogis who are aspiring after spiritual life are also tasting enjoyment by focusing on the super soul within. If there is no pleasure, if there is no enjoyment, then what is the point of going to so much trouble to control the senses? What kind of pleasure are the yogis releasing if they are taking so much trouble? The pleasure is ananta, endless. How is this? The spirit soul is eternal, and the Supreme Lord is eternal. Therefore, reciprocation of their loving exchange is eternal. One who is actually intelligent will refrain from the flickering sensual enjoyment of his material body and fix his enjoyment in spiritual life. His participation in spiritual life with the Supreme Lord is called Rasa Leela. We have often heard of Krishna's Rasa Leela with the covered girls in Vrindavan. That that is not like ordinary exchanges that takes place between these material bodies. Rather, it is an exchange of feelings through spiritual bodies. One has to be somewhat intelligent to understand this. For a foolish man who cannot understand what real happiness is, seeks happiness in the material world. In India, there is a story of man who did not know what sugarcane was and was told that it was very sweet to chew. Oh, what does it look like? He asked. It looked like a bamboo rod, someone said. So the foolish man began to chew all kind of bamboo rods. How can he begin to experience the sweetness of sugarcane? Similarly, we are trying to get happiness and pleasure, but we are trying for them by achieving this material body. Therefore, there is no happiness and no pleasure. For the time being, there may be. some little feeling of pleasure, but that is not actual pleasure, for it is temporary. It is like show of lightning. When we may see flashing in the sky, that may momentarily seem like lightning, but the real lightning is beyond that. Because a person does not really know what happiness is, he deviates from real happiness. The process for establishing oneself in real happiness is the process of Krishna consciousness. By Krishna consciousness, we can gradually develop our real intelligence and naturally enjoy releasing spiritual happiness as we make spiritual progress. As we begin to release spiritual happiness, we proportionately abandon material happiness. As we make progress in understanding the absolute truth, we naturally become detached from this false happiness. Is somehow or other, one is promoted to the stage of Krishna consciousness. What is the result? Yam labdava chaparam labam manyate nadikam tatha yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. Upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. Gita 6.22. When one attains that stage, other achievements appear insignificant. In this material world, we are trying to achieve so many things: riches, women, fame, beauty, knowledge, etc. But as soon as we are situated in Krishna consciousness, we think, oh, no achievement is better than this. Krishna consciousness is so potent that a little taste can save one from the greatest danger. As one begins to release the taste of Krishna consciousness, he begins to see other so called enjoyment and attainments as flat and tasteless. And if one is situated firmly in Krishna consciousness, the greatest danger cannot disturb him. There are so many greatest dangers in life because this material world is a place of danger. We tend to close our eyes to this, and because we are foolish, we try to adjust to these dangers. We may have many dangerous moments in our life, but we are training ourselves in Krishna consciousness and preparing ourselves to go home back to Godhead. We will not care for them. Our attitude will be that dangers come and go, so let them happen. It is very difficult to make this kind of adjustment as long as one is on the materialistic platform and is identifying with the gross body, which is composed of perishable elements. But the more one advances in Krishna consciousness, the more he becomes free from the bodily designations and this material entanglement. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the material world is compared to a great ocean. Within this material universe, there are millions and billions of planets floating in space. And we can just imagine how many Atlantic and Pacific oceans are there. In fact, the whole material universe is likened on a great ocean of misery, an ocean of birth and death. In order to cross the great ocean of nescience, a strong boat is needed, and that strong boat is the lotus feet of Krishna. We should immediately get aboard that boat. We should not hesitate, thinking that Krishna's feet are very small. The whole universe is simply resting on his leg. For one who takes shelter of his feet, it is said that the material universe is no more significant than a puddle of water found in the impression of the hoof print. There is certainly no difficulty in crossing over such a small puddle. Tam vidya dukkhena samyoga vi, viyogam yoga samjin samnigtham. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contract. Gita 6.23. We are entangled in the material world due to uncontrolled senses. The yoga process is meant to control these senses. Is somehow we can manage to control the senses, we can turn our face to actual spiritual happiness and make our life successful. Sanishena Sanishena yoktavyo yoga nirvana chetasa sankalpa pravavan kamans त्वक्ता सर्वान् अशेषतः मानसैवेन्द्रिय ग्रामन् विनियम्य विनियम्य समन्तः सानैर् उपरमेद् बुद्धैर्धृति गृहीत्य आत्मसंस्थं मनः कृत्वा न किंचित् अपि चिन्तयेत् यतो निश्चलाति मानश्चञ्चलम् अस्थिरं ततस्ततो नियमयैतद् आत्मेन एव वंशं नायेत्. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with undeviating determination and faith, and not to be deviated from the path. One should abandon, without expectation, all material desires born of mental speculation, and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. Gradually, step by step, with full conviction, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence sustained by full conviction. And thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. The mind is always disturbed. It is going sometimes this way and sometimes that way. By yoga process, we literally drag the mind of to Krishna consciousness. The mind strays from Krishna consciousness to so many exterior objects because from time immemorial, life after life, that has been our practice. Due to this, there may be great difficulty in the beginning when one tries to fix his mind in Krishna consciousness. But these difficulties can all be overcome. It is because the mind is agitated and non fixed on Krishna that it goes from one thought to another. For instance, when we are engaged in work, memories of events that happened 10, 20, 30, or 40 years ago may suddenly come to our mind for no apparent reason. These thoughts come from our subconsciousness, and because they are always rising, the mind is always agitated. If we agitate a lake or a pond, all the mud from the bottom comes to the surface. Similarly, when the mind is agitated, so many thoughts arise from the subconsciousness that have been stored there over the years. If we do not disturb a pond, the mud will settle to the bottom. This yoga process is the means to quiet the mind and allow all these thoughts to settle. For this reason, there are so many rules and regulations to follow in order to keep the mind from becoming agitated. If we follow the rules and regulation, gradually the mind will come under control. There are so many don'ts and so many do's. And if one is serious about training the mind, he has to follow them. If he acts whimsically, what is the possibility of the mind being controlled? When the mind is finally trained to the point where it will think of nothing but Krishna, it will attain peace and will become very tranquil. Prasantamanasam hai henam yoginam sukam uttamam upa, upaiti santa rajasam brahma bhutam akala akalmasam. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me very verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus is freed from all the reactions to the past deeds. Gita 6.27. The mind is always concocting objects for happiness. I am always thinking this will make me happy or that will make me happy. Happiness is here, happiness is there. In this way, the mind is taking us anywhere and everywhere. It is as though we are riding a chariot behind an unbridled horse. We have no power over where are we going, but only sit in horror and watch helplessly. As soon as the mind is engaged in the process of Krishna consciousness, specifically by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Then the wild horses of the mind will gradually come under our control. We must engage in Krishna's service every moment of our life in order to keep the restlessness and turbulent mind from dragging us from one object to another in a vain search for happiness in the temporary material world. युञ्जान एवं सदा सदात्मनम योगी योगी विगत कल्मष सुखेन ब्रह्म सम संस्पर्शम आत्यंतम सुखम अश्नुते. Thus, the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in the transcendental loving service to the Lord. Gita 6.28. Krishna serves as a patron for one who is devoted to him. When one is in difficulty, his patron save him. As stated in the Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna is a real friend of every living entity, and we have to revive our friendship with him. The method of reviving this friendship is the process of Krishna consciousness. By practice of Krishna consciousness, mundane passionate hankering will come to a stop. This passionate hankering keeps us divorced from Krishna. Krishna is within us and waiting for us to turn to him. But we are too busy passionately eating the fruits of the tree of material desire. This passionate compulsion is to enjoy these fruits must stop, and we must situate ourselves in our real identity as Brahman, pure spirit. The way of chanting and knowing Krishna, chapter 2. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is the transcendental sound vibration. It will help us to cleanse the dust from the mirror of the mind. At the present moment, we have accumulated so much material dust on this mirror of this mind. Just as the Second Avenue, New York City, there is dust and soot over everything due to heavy traffic. Due to our manipulation of material activities, a great deal of dust has been collected over our mind's clear mirror, and as a consequence, we are unable to see things in perspective. This vibration of transcendental sound, the Hare Krishna mantra, will cleanse away the dust and enables us to see clearly our real constitutional position. As soon as we understand, I am not this body, I am spirit soul, and my center is consciousness, we will able to establish ourselves in real happiness. As our consciousness is purified by the process of chanting Hare Krishna, all our material miseries will disappear. There is a fire that is always blazing over this material world, and everyone is trying to extinguish it. But there is no possibility of extinguishing the fires of the miseries of the material nature unless we are situated in our pure consciousness, in our spiritual life. One of the purposes for Lord Krishna descent or appearance in this material world is to extinguish the fire of material existing for all living entities by setting forth the Dharma. यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवत भारत अभ्युत्थानम् अधर्मस्य तद तदात्मानं सृजन्यहम् पवित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and the predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principle of religion. I myself appear, millennium after millennium. Gita 4.7 to 4.8. In this word, the word dharma is used. The word has been translated into English in various ways. Sometimes it is translated as faith. But according to Vedic literature, dharma is not kind of faith. Faith may change, but dharma cannot change. The liquidity of water cannot be changed. If it is changed, if for instance water becomes solid, it is actually no longer in its constitutional position. It is existing under a certain qualifying conditions. Our dharma or constitutional position is that we are part and parcel of supreme, and this being the case, we have to be dovetail or subjugate our consciousness to the supreme. This position of transcendental service to the supreme whole is being misused due to material contact. Service is implicit in our constitutional position. Everyone is a servant and no one is a master. Everyone is serving someone or other. Although the president may be the chief executive of the state, still he is serving the state. And when his services are no longer required, the state disposes of him. To think to oneself, I am the master of all I survey, is called Maya, illusion. Thus, in material consciousness, our service is being misused under various designations. When we can become free from these designations, that is to say, when the dust has been cleared from this mirror of the mind, we will be able to see ourselves in our actual position as eternal servants of Krishna. One should not think that his service in the material worlds and his service in the spiritual atmosphere are same. We may shudder to think, oh, after liberation, will I still be a servant? This is because we have experienced that being a servant in the material world is not very enjoyable. But transcendental service is not like this. In the spiritual world, there is no difference between the servant and the master. Here, of course, there is distinction. But in the absolute world, everything is one. For instance, in the Bhagavad-gītā, we can see that Krishna has taken the position of servant as a charioted driver of Arjuna. In his constitutional position, Arjuna is the servant of Krishna. But in behavior, we can see that sometimes the Lord becomes the servant of the servant. So we should be careful not to carry materialistic ideas into the spiritual realm. Whatever we have materially experienced is but a perverted reflection of the things in spiritual life. When our constitutional position or dharma is deteriorated due to the contamination of matter, the Lord Himself comes as an incarnation or sends some of His confidential servitors. Lord Jesus Christ called Himself as the Son of God and so is a representative of the Supreme. Similarly, Muhammad identified himself as a servant of the Supreme Lord. Thus, whenever there is a dispensary in our constitutional position, the Supreme Lord either comes himself or sends his representative to inform us the real position of the living entity. Therefore, one should not make the mistake of thinking that Dharma is created faith. In its proper sense, Dharma cannot be divorced from the living entity at all. It is it is to the living entity what sweetness is to sugar, or saltness is to salt, or solidity is to stone. In no case can it be cut off. The dharma of living entity is to serve, and we can easily see that every living entity has tendency to serve himself or others. How to serve Krishna? How to disentangle ourselves from the materialistic service? How to attain Krishna consciousness and become free from material designations is all taught as a science by Sri Krishna in Bhagavad-gītā. The word sadhu in the verse quoted above, beginning uh, pavitranaya sadhunam, refers to a holy man or a saintly man. A saintly person is tolerant, very kind to everyone, is a friend of all living entities, is no one's enemy, and is always peaceful. There are 26 basic qualifications for a holy name, and in the Bhagavad Gita, we find that Sri Krishna himself given the following verdict: Abhichetsu duracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadur eva sa man mantyavya samyog vyavasito hi sa. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. Gita 9.30. On the mundane platform, what is mortality for one person is immortality for another, and what is immortality for one person is morality for another. According to the Hindu conception, the drinking of wine is immoral, whereas the Western world, wine drinking is not considered immoral but a common thing. So, morality is dependent on time, place, circumstance, social position, etc. There is, however, a sense of morality and immorality in all societies. In this verse, Krishna points out that even if one is engaged in immoral acts, but at the same time is fully in Krishna consciousness, he is to be considered to a sadhu or a saint. In other words, although a person may have some immoral habits due to his past association, if he is engaged fully in Krishna consciousness, these habits are not to be considered important. Whatever the case, if one becomes Krishna consciousness, he will gradually be purified and will become a sadhu. As one progresses in executing Krishna consciousness, his bad habits diminish and he attains to saintly perfection. In this regard, there is a story of a thief who went to a pilgrimage to the holy town. And en route, he and other pilgrims stopped to rest overnight at an inn. Being addicted to stealing, the thief began making plans to steal the other pilgrims' baggage. But he thought, I am going on a pilgrimage, so it doesn't seem appropriate that I should steal the baggage. No, I shall not do it. Nonetheless, due to his habit, he could not keep his hands off the baggage. So he picked up one person's bag and placed it in another's place, and then another's bag and placed it elsewhere. He spent all night placing different bags in different places, but his conscience bothered him so that he could not take anything from them. In the morning, when the other pilgrim awoke, they looked around for their bags and could not find them. There was a great row, and eventually, one by one, they began to find the bags in various places. After they were all found, the thief explained, "Gentlemen, I am a thief by occupation. Being that I am habituated to stealing at night, I wanted to steal something from your bags. But I thought that since I am going to do this holy place, it is not possible to steal. So I may have rearranged the baggage. But please excuse me. This is a characteristic of a bad habit. He does not want to commit theft anymore, but because he is habituated, sometimes he does. Thus, Krishna says that one who has decided to refrain from his immoral habits and make progress in Krishna consciousness is to be considered a sadhu. Even if out of past habit or by chance he yields to his fault, in the next verse we find Sri Krishna says, स्क्रिपं स्क्रिपं भवति धर्मात्मा सस्वच्छान्तिं निगच्छति कौन्तेय प्रतिजिञ्जन्ति नामे भक्त prane, pranashyati. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotees never perishes. Gita 9.31. Because one has committed himself to Krishna consciousness, it is proclaimed here by Sri Krishna that within a very short time he will become saintly. One may pull the plug of an electric fan, and the fan may still go on even though juice has been disconnected. But it is understood that the fan will soon come to a stop. Once we take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, we turn we turn the switch off for our karmic activities, and although these activities may still revolve, it is to be understand that they will be quickly diminished. It is a fact that whoever takes to Krishna consciousness does not have to endeavor independently to become a good man. All the good qualification will be automatically come. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that one who has attained Krishna consciousness has simultaneously attained all good qualities. On the other hand, if a person is devoid of God consciousness and yet has many good qualities, his good qualities are to be considered useless. For evil, for evil not in any way be prohibited from doing what that which is undesirable. If one is devoid of Krishna consciousness, he is sure to commit mischief in the material world. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vetti tattvaha tvakta deham punarjanma naiti mam etiso arjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving this body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode. O Arjuna. Gita 4.9. The mission for which Krishna appears is here further explained. When he comes with some mission, there are some activities. Of course, there are some philosophers who do not believe that God comes as an incarnation. They say, why should God come to this rotten world? But from the Bhagavad-gītā, we understand otherwise. We should always remember that we read the Bhagavad-gītā as scripture, and whatever is spoken in the Bhagavad-gītā must be accepted. Otherwise, there is no reason of reading it. In the Gita, Krishna says that he has come as an incarnation with a mission, and along with this mission, there are some activities we can see. For example, that Krishna is active as a chariot driver for Arjuna and engages in so many activities on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Just as when there is war, one person or nation may side with another person or the nation show partiality. Krishna on the battlefield shows some partiality and sides with Arjuna. Actually, Krishna is not partial to anyone, but externally it appears that he is partial. This partiality, however, should not be accepted in the ordinary sense. In this verse, Krishna also points out that his descendant in material world is transcendental. The word Divyam means transcendental. His activities are not in a way ordinary. Even today in India, at the end of the August, the people are accustomed to celebrating Krishna's birthday, regardless of sect. Just as in the Western world, Jesus Christ's birthday is celebrated as Christmas, Krishna's birthday is called Janmashtami. And in the verse, Krishna uses the word Janma in referring to my birth. Because there is birth, there are some activities. Krishna's birth and activities are transcendental, which means that they are not like ordinary births and activities. One may ask, how is that his activities are transcendental? He is born, he takes part in the battle with Arjuna, he has a father by the name of Vasudeva and a mother Devaki, and a family. What can be considered transcendental? Krishna says, Evam yo vetti tattva, evam yo vetti tattvaha. We must know of his birth and activities in truth. When one knows Krishna's birth and activities in truth, the result is Tvakta deham punarjanma naiti mam iti so Arjuna. When he leaves this material world, he is not born again but goes directly to Krishna. This means that he becomes a liberated soul. He goes to the eternal spiritual world and attains his constitutional position full of bliss, knowledge, and eternality. All this can be obtained simply by knowing in truth and transcendental nature of Krishna's birth and activities. Ordinarily, when one quits the body, he has to take up another body. The lives of living entities are going on simply due to the living entities changing dress from one body to another. Transmigration of the soul. According to the work of living entities, at the present moment, we may think that this spiritual body is our actual body, but it is like the dress. In reality, we do have an actual body, a spiritual body. This material body is superficial compared to the real spiritual body of the living entity. When this material body becomes old and worn out, or when it is rendered useless by some accident, we put it aside and we might put aside a soil or ruined suit and take up another material body. Vasamsi jirnani yatta viyave नव्यानि गृह्णाति नरो पराणि तथा तथा शरीराणि विहे जीर्णानि अनन्या अन्यानि संयति नवानि देहि. As a person puts on new garments, giving up his old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless one. Gita 2.22. In the beginning, the body is the size of a pea. Then it grows to become a baby, then a child, a young boy, a youth, a grown man, and an old man. And finally, when it becomes useless, the living entity changes into another body. The body is therefore always changing, and death is simply the ultimate change of the person of the present body. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram kaumaram yavvanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhritastat dhirastatra namuyyate. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Gita 2.13. Although the body is changing, the dweller within the body remains the same. Although the boy grows into manhood, the living entity within the body is not changed. It is not that the self who was there as a boy has gone away. Medical science agrees that at every moment the material body is changing. Just as living entities are not bewildered by this, an enlightened man is not bewildered when the body undergoes its ultimate change at death. But a person who does not understand things as they are laments, in the material condition, we are simply changing bodies all the time. That is our desire, that is our disease. It is not that we always change to a human body. We may change to an animal body or a demigod body depending on our activities. According to the Padma Purana, there are 84 billion species of life, 8.4 million species of life. We can take on any of them at death. But Krishna promises that one who knows his birth and activities in truth is freed from the cycle of transmigration. How does one understand Krishna's birth and activities in truth? This is explained in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā. Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavanyascha tattvaha tato mam tattvato jnatava vishate tad anantaram. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is one is full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. Here again the tattva in truth is used. One can understand the signs of Krishna in truth by becoming a devotee. He who is not a devotee, who does not strive for Krishna consciousness, cannot understand. At the beginning of the fourth chapter, also Krishna tells Arjuna, Gita 4.8, that he is explaining this ancient science of yoga to him because Arjuna is my my devotee, and my friend. For one who simply makes an academic study of Bhagavad-gītā, the science of Krishna remains a mystery. The Bhagavad-gītā is not a book that one can just purchase from the bookstore and understand by scholarship alone. Arjuna was not a great scholar, not a Vedantist, not a philosopher, not a Brahmana, not a renunciate. He was a family and a military man. But still, Arjuna selected him to be the recipient of the Bhagavad Gita and the first authority in the disciplic succession. Why? Because you are my devotee. That is the qualification to understand the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and Krishna as he is. One must become Krishna consciousness. Krishna conscious. And what is Krishna consciousness? That is the process of cleansing the dust from the mirror of the mind through the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By chanting this mantra and by hearing the Bhagavad Gita, we can gradually attain to Krishna consciousness. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam. Krishna is always present within our heart. The individual soul and the super soul are both sitting in the tree of the body. The individual soul, Jiva, is eating the fruit of the tree. The sup- and the super soul, Paramatma, is witnessing. As the individual soul begins to of devotional service and gradually begins to develop this Krishna consciousness, the super soul who is seated within begins to help him all dust all the impurities from the mirror of his mind. Krishna is a friend to all saintly persons, and attempt to become Krishna conscious is a saintly endeavor. Shravanam Kirtanam. By chanting and hearing, one can come to understand the signs of Krishna and thereby come to understand Krishna. And upon understanding Krishna, one can, at the moment of death, go immediately to his abode in the spiritual world. This spiritual world is described thus in the Bhagavad-gītā. न तद्बस न तद्बस बसयेतु सूर्यो न सन् न सन् न ससन्को न पवक यद्गत्वा न निवर्रन् निवर्तन्ते तद्धर्म परमं मम. That supreme abode of mine is not illuminated by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. The material world is always dark. Therefore, we require the sun, moon, and electricity. The Vedas enjoin us not to remain in this darkness but to transfer ourselves to the world of illumination, the spiritual world. The word darkness has twofold meaning. It not only means without life, but it means ignorance. The Supreme Lord has manifold energies. It is not that he comes to this material world to perform activities. It is stated in the Veda that Supreme Lord has nothing to do. In the Bhagavad-gītā, Sri Krishna also says, Name par, Name pratasti kartavyam trisu lokesu kinchana nanavaptam ava avapvayam varta eva cha karmani. O son of Partha, there is no work prescribed for me within all three planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. Gita 3.22. We should therefore not think that Krishna is required to descend upon this material world and engage in so many activities. No one is equal or greater than Krishna, and he has all knowledge naturally. It is not that he has to undergo penances to acquire knowledge, or that he at any time has to receive knowledge or attain knowledge. At all times and in all conditions is full of knowledge. He may be speaking the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, but at no time was he ever taught the Bhagavad Gita. One who can understand that this is Krishna's position does not have to return to the cycle of birth and death in this material world. Being under the influence of illusion, we spend our lifetimes trying to make adjustment in this material atmosphere. But this is not purpose of human life. Human life is meant for understanding the signs of Krishna. Our material needs are these: the problem of eating, of mating, of sleeping, of defending ourselves, and of acquiring sense gratification. These are common both to human beings and to animals. The animals are busily engaged trying to solve these problems, and if we are also only engaged in in solving them, how are we different? How are we any different from the animals? The human beings, however, has a special qualification whereby he can develop transcendental Krishna consciousness. But if he does not avail himself of this, he is an animal category. He is in the animal category. The defect of the modern civilization is that it puts too much stress on solving these survival problems. As spiritual living uh, beings, it is incumbent upon to extricate ourselves from this entanglement of birth and death. We should therefore be careful not to miss the special opportunity of human life. Sri Krishna himself comes to deliver the Bhagavad-gītā and to help us to become God conscious. Indeed, this very material creation is given us to utilize for this cultivation. But if after receiving this chance and gift of human life, we do not utilize them to develop Krishna consciousness, we shall be missing this rare opportunity. The process for cultivation is very simple. Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting. We have nothing to do other than listen, and by listening carefully, enlightenment is sure to come. Krishna will surely help, for he is seated within. We only have to make the effort and spare a little time. We will not need anyone to ask us whether we are making progress. We will know it automatically. Just as an angry man knows that he has been satisfied by a full meal, actually, this process of Krishna consciousness or self realization is not very difficult. Krishna taught it to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, and we understand the Bhagavad Gita just as Arjuna did. We will have no problem in coming to the perfectional state. But if we try to interpret the Bhagavad Gita according to our own mundane academic mentality, we spoil it all. As stated before, this chanting of Hare Krishna is a process by which all contaminations due to material association are removed from the mirror of the mind. There is no need for external help in reviving our consciousness, for Krishna consciousness is dormant within the self. In fact, it is very quality of the self. We have only to invoke it by this process. Krishna consciousness is an eternal fact. It is not a doctrine or set of beliefs imposed by some organization. It is within all living entities, whether they be human beings or animal. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was passing through the jungles of South India some 500 years ago, he chanted Hare Krishna, and all the animals, the tigers, elephants, and deer, joined him in dancing to the holy names of the God. Of course, this depends on the purity of chanting. As we progress in chanting, purification is sure to come. So we have ended the second chapter as well. It is the thorough of chanting, the way of chanting and knowing Krishna. So we will stop here and here. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhishya kripasindhubhyo pavani Vaishnava.